Good morning. So I remember sitting in my car at 7:45 in the morning crying. I was crying because I was thinking about how the hell am I going to tell anybody that I just got arrested at an airport. I had a 7:10 flight, and years ago they had these peanut flights or peanut fare airlines from Green to New Jersey and New York. It was about a 50-minute flight, and I was scheduled to take that to New York, and I was going to drive to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I probably could have gotten a flight to Philly, but I figured I'd rather endure a 55-minute flight than an hour and 20-minute flight in a jet. For some reason, I figured I'd have more control in a prop plane. Not that I was going to fly it, but I think because I felt if I lost my mind, there were very few people on the plane that would see me. And that's the way agoraphobics think. Anyway, I was scheduled to come back late that same afternoon because I had to be back for a wedding the following day, knowing full well I was going to use the rent-a-car, make up some excuse to myself, drive past Newark, all the way home, even if it cost me more money for the rent-a-car. But I'll deal with that whole mental mess later on. So right now, I'm walking down the runway with about 80 other people, mostly business people, and I'm trying to act like them. I got my suit on, my overcoat, my briefcase, and I always looked the part, but underneath, I was anything but. I had to give a presentation about a manufacturing company we just started selling to a manufacturing company and their affiliated company about printing on the containers, the decorating part. And they're from China. And I was going to give the presentation to the Chinese affiliated company through an interpreter. Anyway, again, I'll deal with that mental crap later. Right now, I'm on the plane, and I'm not a big guy per se, but I was walking down to my seat. And because I was bending over, it felt so small. And once again, people drinking coffee and that damn smell on the plane. And just talking, and it always drove me nuts because I wish I could do that. I love coffee. As we got on the plane, I could see the pilots in their short sleeve shirts and they're moving the switches up above, and the plane looked so old to me, but I don't know why. I remember looking outside and seeing the snow and just wishing I could be back in the plant fixing machines with my 3/8 wrench rather than being dressed up in a suit, getting ready to fly, give a presentation, being scared out of my mind for all those hours on end. But this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be, or is it? I know it's the way of becoming successful and not being stuck in the back working on machines my whole life. It was fun and great, but I wanted more, and more importantly, I wanted freedom. And I knew that freedom had to do with somehow, some way, fighting this beast for the rest of my life. Little did I know. Anyway, as the pilot's talking and telling us we're ready to go as soon as they shut the door and everybody's seated, I started hyperventilating. I fought the beast, as you know, my whole life, and many, many times I won. But for some reason, it had control over me that morning, and I couldn't deal with it. Maybe it was thinking about the presentation, standing up in front of 15, 20 people, having them all focused on me. I don't know. Then the flight attendant closed the door and locked it, and it made me infuriated, and I lost control. I unbuckled my seatbelt. I remembered I left my briefcase, and I walked towards the door. My eyes were glazed. The props were on and loud, and I heard them going, and it was noisy, and the flight attendant demanded I go sit down, and I said, I got to get off this plane. She screamed, sir, go sit down. And I said words I shouldn't have said. I said, I got to get off this effing plane. I could hear the props start to whine harder, and I started to walk towards the door. Today, I'd probably get arrested and be in jail, but the flight attendant opened the cockpit door, spoke to the pilot, and the head guy came out and said to me in a pissed off voice, what is your problem? I said, sir, but as you can see, I have a bad fear of flying, and I'm ashamed to tell you, I got to get off this plane right now. And he got so mad, and he said, what the hell did you get on for in the first place? And I wanted to say, because I've been fighting this thing my whole life. You don't know what it's like, Mr. Captain. You're normal. I am not. So, he opened the door. The co-pilot turned the props down and called somebody on the phone. I remember looking back, seeing all these pissed off business people because I'm delaying their flight, and I really could care less. I do remember seeing my briefcase, my brown briefcase, and I walked back, and I didn't look at anybody in the eyes. And anyway, they opened the door. I saw 3 cops there in heavy winter jackets. One person had his hand on his gun, and the other person had handcuffs. When I got to the bottom, he said, turn around. One guy grabbed my briefcase, they handcuffed me, and they guided me to this little interrogation room. I told them the whole story, and being the macho guy, I was able to explain to them, I've been trying my whole life to fight this fear of flying. I am so sorry I put you guys out. And I thought I could fight it today, but I just lost. And I honestly think I hit a nerve with them because I was a bigger guy, and I swear I knew one of them from the gym. I wasn't rude. I was really, for the first time in my life, telling somebody I had this fear. Maybe being a cop, they could associate with some sort of fear. They believed me. They did say, please don't fly until you get this taken care of. And then they let me go. That was 1986, and I was 24 years old, working for my dad. Fast forward to 1986, and I'm working down the aisle with my brand new bride. Not the church, but the plane. I'm trying to find our seats, trying to make small talk, and more importantly, trying not to think about the 5-hour flight we had to get to Antigua. That's where we're going on our honeymoon. My wife was a flight attendant, so this is like her sitting in her living room. For me, it was pure hell. And it started the night of the wedding. Yeah, I know. Sounds funny, but it's the truth. I dreaded it. Believe it or not, dreading my honeymoon. How the hell am I going to fly 5 hours in a plane? So I just kept trying to think about the constant fight I'm going to have with this beast the whole ride there. Always thinking, I know it was horrible last time I flew, but this will be the end. This is where I'm going to go crazy and spiral out of control and do something stupid to me or somebody else, or suffocate. Talking about it now, 30 years later, I can still feel those feelings. It's weird. But when something that long and so strong affects you that way, I guess it never leaves. Anyway, my wife was almost yawning before they closed the door, and I swear to God, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just remember, I said it before, watching people do crossword puzzles and eat their sandwiches or breakfast or yogurt, and again, actually drinking coffee on a plane. How the hell do you do that? I also remember fighting with myself back and forth because I wanted so desperately to tell Robbie what I was going through. That wasn't going to happen. And I remembered the dong sound, which is the pilot telling everybody we've reached cruising altitude, and at that point, I was losing my mind. I couldn't show the fear in front of my wife or in front of anybody, for that matter, and I was shaking like a leaf. And I remember hyperventilating and fake smiling to my wife. I think if she was up, she would know. She would have recognized it. The tightness in my chest was unreal. And I just remember smelling that damn coffee, and I can't believe people can act so normal in a tin can, 35,000 feet in the air, with no hospitals or help around. I remember thinking the smell of the caffeine would turn me loose into some sort of wild animal. I remember just staring at a brochure and thinking, if I start screaming and hollering in front of 200 passengers, they would land the plane and arrest me. And then I actually prayed the plane would start to nosedive, and everybody, including my wife, would actually feel what I was feeling at that moment. I never wanted the plane to crash, but I was so pissed at everybody just sitting there cross-legged and acting so calm. And that's what it's like being agoraphobic. Anyway, so I'm 30,000 feet in the air in a tin can, and I look back at these flights now, and I'm just amazed at myself. And yes, I'm saying that. I did it. It sucked, but I did it. I was a constant battle, and it was a battle, and I always thought I was going to lose it. I could have said, you know what, babe, I'm petrified to fly, but that wasn't the truth. I was petrified of everything. Flying when you suffer from anxiety and panic attacks is the worst, because at least when you're on the ground, there's some sort of safety. Everybody, and I mean everybody I've spoken to for decades of dealing with panic and anxiety, they never flew, not once. They always made an excuse, and believe me, there were many times I did also. But that was business related. I could have easily have flown to Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Jersey. Back then they had these peanut fares, as I mentioned, quick flights, but still flying. But I always made an excuse to myself. Actually, I can maybe visit other customers between Rhode Island and Baltimore and Pittsburgh or whatever, and that's why I drove. But still, it was better than flying. There were times when I could not get rid of it. An example was this fun time. I had a broker in New Haven, Connecticut. I was the manufacturer, and he asked me to go to a customer with him and do what's called a dog and pony show, excuse me, with him. Paul introducing me to his customer, I educating everybody at the table why they should go through this broker, which is essentially will be me as the manufacturer, and purchase our containers. So he tells me 2 days before he had a friend who owned a private plane. I stayed over in New Haven. I met the pilot, and we went to dinner and we had drinks, too many. We were supposed to meet New Haven Airport at 7:30 in the morning. It was absolutely frigid outside, which didn't help my anxiety at all. I was shaking like a leaf, and Paul the broker was so calm, and I was pissed at him because he was my customer, but still, why was he calm? The guy who was flying the plane pointed to a plane as we were walking, shivering. That's it over there, he says. He pointed like 50 yards away. We walked to the plane, and as I got closer, I swear to God, I almost made an excuse not to go. And no word of a lie, it was the smallest plane I've ever seen. It had a single prop, and here's the kicker. That wasn't the plane. It was the one behind it, which was even smaller. We went out the night before, as I mentioned, and we had too much alcohol, and alcohol makes anxiety so much worse the day after, and I was a basket case. I almost told Paul I'm not going. If I lose the business, I lose the business. I could care less. So I'm completely overwhelmed, almost paralyzed with fear. This is how small the plane was. He took the cover off the plane, no word of a lie, opened the glove box and put it inside. It was a two-seater with a storage for a suitcase and maybe, some golf clubs in the back. Unbelievable. So Paul got in, moved the seat forward and lay down and almost was asleep by the time the plane started. The pilot put the headphones on and pointed to mine, and I reached for the green things, and I was shaking so much I thought he would see me. Again, I sat in the passenger seat, and our shoulders and arms were like pressed against each other. That's how small it was. And I'm not exaggerating one iota. He was talking to the tower, and I heard the engine start up, and he lit a cigarette, which I could not believe. And all I smelled was the cigarette and this musty smell of the cover that was about 4 feet from my nose in the glove box. I was barely looking out the windshield because I was petrified. He reached across my lap, opened my door, and shut it, just to make sure it was closed, like an old 79 VW Bug. Again, no word of a lie. We taxied and we took off, and I was looking for a barf bag. Absolute worst nightmare. My heart's pumping, I was sweating, I was freezing, and my throat was closing. I gave myself to God. I thought about my family. I thought about everything. I thought I was going to die. I wasn't afraid of crashing. So I looked over at the pilot, and he was so calm. He was talking to the tower, and I could hear every word. And we got up to about 7,500 feet, and I remember him saying that when we get to New York or anywhere near JFK, LaGuardia, we have to be below 7,500 or I think above 15,000. I can't remember. But we're in the smallest plane possible, and we're going up to 15,000 feet. And then he said, and I quote, "Have you ever seen the Statue of Liberty from the air?" And I managed to hyperventilate a no, and he tilted the fucking plane at an angle, to where I was leaning against the door, and I almost died. I literally almost had a heart attack. I grabbed his arm, and I remember the plane actually moved because he had his hands on the wheel. He yelled at me. I yelled back at him. I don't remember what he said, but I was scared because I think he was able to go under 7,500 feet, but he throttled up and went to about 15,000. We didn't say a word the whole time. So I took my headphones off and I threw it on the floor. We were going to Havre de Grace, Maryland. Our goal, get in, sell, get back to New Haven, all within a 5-hour period. I think to this day, Paul wanted to show off he had a friend with a plane, big effing deal, could care less. But he was trying to impress me to do more business with him, not the other brokers. It's amazing. Through all this mental anguish, I was still very good at what I was doing. I wish I could have enjoyed it more. I remember the feeling of landing more importantly. I remember thinking about the excuses I'm going to make when I land, about I'm not going to fly back with these nut jobs, especially in that plane. Now comes the interesting part. I had my samples in my briefcase, and now I had to, with all this anxiety, adrenaline, and cortisol, and fear, I had to present to 5 people and get them to trust me so that they will buy through Paul, knowing that I am the manufacturer. Again, I always give myself credit, and I always forgive myself because I made it through all that crap. I am my own inspiration, and I know it might sound like I'm full of myself, but people, you have to trust me when I tell you, if you've suffered or you know somebody that is, you've achieved any type of success whatsoever, if not for yourself, for them, congratulate them, because I know what it's like, and I know what I've been through. So after the absolute anxiety-filled presentation with Paul, looking at me, he was looking at me with this proud smile on his face. I actually felt pretty good. And me and the pilot started to joke a little bit. And in my head, I said, "Screw it. I'm gonna go fly back with these guys." and back to my house and my wife and my family. So I'm getting on a plane, and this was 1996, 5 years into me just starting my company. My kids were very young, so I needed all the business I could, and I had to prove to myself I could do it. Not only to myself, but customers and vendors and brokers, distributors, everybody. And this was me again, pushing and testing and fighting, always thinking that the next obstacle will make me get better. And unfortunately, it never did. As we got up in the air, I was talking to the pilot, and I can't remember his name, but I'll say he smoked like a fiend. And then he asked me at 15,000 feet if I wanted to fly. And all I could think of was, yeah. He told me to grab the wheel, and I did. I was flying. I was doing the flying. I was in control of the plane for about 15 minutes. No thoughts, no beast, nothing. We took a different route back. I think we went over Jersey, upstate New York. And I have to tell you, I was really nervous, but I was excited. I was possibly doing the thing that I dreaded the most. I was flying a plane. Incredible. I remember landing, and I didn't land, but it's still being freezing cold, and we shook hands and said some things and laughed, and I said I couldn't wait to do it again, knowing full well I'm not. So I got in my car at the airport, and I drove home, and I grabbed a nice coffee. I tried to feel normal. For about an hour, I felt great, on top of the world. And then my emotions got the better of me, and I just started bawling my eyes out. I pulled over to rest area in Stonington, Connecticut, and just started shaking uncontrollably. Everything came pouring out. Looking in the mirror, I remember saying, "You did it. You beat it again. Be proud." And by the way, that was me remembering, and the start of me realizing years later, the best coach is a mirror. Fast forward to 2019, we took a flight to Europe. I've never been, and it was the first time. We went to Italy, and we took a cruise to Greece, Croatia, and back to Italy and flew home. 8 hours there, 10 hours back. And when you fly to Europe, you fly at night, and I had the same feelings I had before. I used my tools, and I did get anxious sitting in the airport with my family. I did get anxious in the air, but never to a point where it was so overwhelming. I never watch movies in a plane because if it says the movie is an hour and a half long, I know halfway through I still got like 45 minutes before the movie's over. And that's the kind of weird stuff that people with anxiety think of. Well, on this trip to Europe last year, I watched 2 1.5-hour movies and I read. I had the time of my life. I only hope and pray you realize the amount of times I've been in a plane are hundreds. After my 40th birthday, I'm 59 now, I can honestly say that being in a plane, for me, is almost as comfortable as me being in my living room. I am proud of myself, and yes, I am my biggest fan, and will continue to say those words, and hopefully people, you know I am trying to show you that it is possible, and I want you to be proud of yourself too. In all my experience and all my failures, and the most proudest of the fact that I refuse to quit. My success in business is a byproduct of failing and refusing to accept I am a failure. It's not okay to be proud. It is okay to be proud of yourself. I encourage you to do that. My story, an agoraphobic takes flight, it ends in triumph, not tragedy. Please be well. I'll see you next week. Thank you.